All right, so natural pest controls. Welcome again, guys, to the course. In the chat box, if you just did join, go ahead and type your name, your license number, your county, the state, and your phone number, and that will allow us to get this credit given to you yesterday. So let's get started with natural pest controls and our objectives. I title it landscape contractors. That's what we are. We're pesticide applicators, we're landscapers, but we will identify what are natural pest controls. And some of them are pretty cool. They're really cool, good stuff to have. Other stuff, we may not want to deal with them, but we definitely do not want to get rid of them in our landscape. We will also identify what are pests. Now, certain things are going to be a pest in one situation, but not another situation. Can anybody give me an example of that? Where a creature, a living organism, whether it's a plant, an insect, usually not a fungus, but sometimes funguses can be beneficial, but especially when it comes to insects and when it comes to plant pests. When are they a pest in a situation and not another? Has anybody got a good example? And we're probably fighting it pretty hard this time of year.
Blight?
Huh?
Blight, the only thing I can say is like companion planting for your vegetables.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
About the what them Japanese beetles?
Yeah. I guess
they're crazy.
Yeah.
Right now. Yeah.
Right now they are. Yes, they are in full swing. But think about what's coming up in our sidewalks. What are we having to get the backpack sprayers off the truck and take care of right now? It's growing up in our shrub beds. It's growing in the asphalt driveways.
Ants.
Weeds.
Well, weeds. Yeah, ants are there.
Mosquitoes.
But I'm thinking about
mosquitoes.
Bermuda grass.
What?
What about Bermuda grass? Bermuda grass is a pest if it's growing in our shrub beds, right?
Right. Yeah.
But if we're on the golf course or we're on an athletic field, Bermuda grass is not a pest. It's a wanted plant. How many of you guys live in the transition zone where you got warm season and cool season grasses growing next to each other? You got one client that'll have it. Yeah. One client's got zoysia, or they may have Bermuda. The customers next door may have fescue. What is that Bermuda grass going to keep doing to that fescue?
Taking over.
It's going to just take over. It's going to merge. Well, for the one customer that has the Bermuda grass, it's not a pest, but that is a big, big pest for your cool season client. And there needs to be some type of separation in between those yards. And that really drives me crazy that there's not a shrub bed or some type of space that separates the different turf grasses. I don't even like tall fescue button up to another neighbor's tall fescue. I want some type of separation there that will help separate the yards. But we'll also identify how natural pest controls work. And then we will identify ways that we can use natural pest controls. And in this lesson, we look at the balance of nature and some of the fundamental ways in which living organisms control their own population and populations of other living organisms. Now, look at what we're going through right now with, COVID-19. It's a living organism, right? And it has put restrictions on us. We can't do everything that we want to do. Now everybody here in North Carolina, we're supposed to wear masks everywhere we go. This is a living organism that is controlling us. And we're going to have to, stop it. We're going to have to nip it in the bud before we can return back to normal. I'll skip over that one. But obviously, when we look at all living organisms, we are including the subset of organisms that we regard as pests. So really, what would be a basic term or basic definition for a pest?
Something we don't want.
Something we don't want. Exactly. It is a plant. It's an insect. It's a disease. It's a fungus. Whatever it is that we don't want in our landscape.
Virus.
Sir?
Virus.
I'm sorry, I still didn't hear you.
I say a virus. We don't want it.
Gotcha. So what is natural pest control? It's pest control that occurs in nature without any prompting from humans. It's what's occurring every single day in Mother Nature. And Mother Nature can be harsh. She can get feisty with these creatures. Always think about, being born a human and not having to be an animal that's out there having to fight for our life every single day. Birds of prey, they are a natural pest control for what? Field mice, everything growing in the yard that can move, they're going to grab it. As humans, we have disturbed this great system, and we must learn how to reestablish the effects of natural pest control. And yes, humans, we mess up everything. We are the ones destroying the environment. Except for us, always look at green industry professionals. I mean, we're stewards of the land. We are there to help not only our clients, but to help Mother Nature, to help the environment. And we, as pesticide applicators, we get criticized quite a bit, don't we, when we have to apply chemicals. People are always fighting the use of fertilizer, the use of nitrogen, everything, everywhere. There's some states that actually have to have, pre-warnings. You have to call the neighbors and everything else before you make an application. So luckily here in North Carolina, we haven't had to do that yet. But we still take a lot of heat from the general public when they see us in a spray truck, or definitely when they see us in our full suits where we're having to wear all of the PPE. But understanding the natural principles will help you tremendously in managing pest problems. Furthermore, these concepts are critical to the development of a successful IPM program. Now, what does IPM stand for? Integrated Pest Management, which is a big, big topic. The universities and all the consultants, they're pushing for this. How many of you guys actually create an integrated pest management plan for your clients, or have had clients at least talk to you about it? This is one thing that if you take to your clients, especially the ones that are against pesticides, that you could possibly do at IPM. There's IPM plans. There's plans already out there on the internet that you can get for tall fescue, Bermuda, zoysia grass, and you could start working them into your turf care plan or your turf management plan. And the good thing about an IPM program, it doesn't necessarily wipe out the use of pesticides. We only use a pesticide as a last resort. We look at other things. Now, it's going to be hard to spray clover. I mean, it's going to be hard to get rid of clover unless we do spray it. But the idea, if you have your clients on a turf management program, that once you get it good, brought it up to par, that this IPM program is going to be a lot easier to implement the following years. Like, what would be a good way to reduce Bermuda grass in fescue? What's one way that we could reduce it? It's not necessarily going to get rid of all of it, but what is a cultural practice that we could do with our tall fescue to reduce the amount of Bermuda grass coming up?
Pulling.
Huh?
Pulling, remove by hand.
Yeah, you could do that, but it's gonna take multiple visits doing that, because the rhizomes and stuff are gonna be in the ground. They're still gonna pop up. But what's one way we could shade out Bermuda? Bermuda's got to have full sunlight.
Keep it high. Keep the grass.
Keep it high. Yeah, mow it at 4 inches. But that's going to be hard to convince some of our residential clients that we need to mow their turf grass at 4 inches. They're going to cut a little bit shorter. It may be one of those things. Hey, in the springtime, we may have to cut it twice. But there are clients that will go for that, just knowing that they're not going to have to use a pesticide. And usually a second mowing, you know, is cheaper than a pesticide application. Crabgrass, Digitaria species, it can produce 2,000 seeds per square foot in a single season. Now, this is a big money maker for us, doing the 2 pre-emergent applications. Do we necessarily want to get rid of crabgrass? Probably not. It's going to be impossible to do that anyway, but this is a big money maker for us. It's going to be there forever. Crabgrass is. What's one way crabgrass gets spread from yard to yard to yard? By us.
Mowing with lawnmower.
Mowing it, getting it in the mower blades. It's on the deck. We even walk through it. We've got some of the seed in our boots. Gets around our shoelaces. It sticks to us. Some of it even sticks to our pant legs. And when we go to the next yard that may be, you know, weed free, next season we're getting crabgrass just because we're mowing the neighbors. But really, it doesn't matter. They could care less. They just want it mowed, blowed off, and gone. Because we're going to see clients that have different thresholds or different I guess you would call it a threshold. It's not going to bother them. It's not going to matter if they have clover in their yard. They're not going to worry if they've got a few weeds here and there. But then you might have one down the street that you're taking care of that has to be 100% weed free. And so you've got to kind of be careful. We should really clean our mowers between each property, but that's hard to do. I mean, you can take a backpack blower and blow off the deck and stuff like that, but it's not going to get every single seed, especially when there's 2,000 seeds per square foot. That's what it can produce. A good old picture of it. All right, some good information here. The common housefly can lay 600 eggs, which mature in about 6 days in hot weather. So we're seeing that. We're getting hot weather right now. What do you think this would do in an entire summer? Think about this. We have a hot, dry summer, which we're not having we're not having a dry one. I mean, we had a pretty good thunderstorm here today. What happens with these 2 flies? We have a male and a female. If there was not natural pest controls, what do you think these 2 flies could do?
Multiply.
Multiply at an exceptional rate. If you got your phone handy and you got a calculator app on it, just click that. So let's say we got 2 flies. They're going to produce 600 babies. Those 600 babies are going to produce 600 babies in 6 more days. Well, in a week, guys, we've got 360,000. Another 6 days, those 360,000 are going to have 600. That puts us at 216 million in just 2 weeks. What about at 3 weeks? It just says 1.296 e to the 11th power. The calculator can't even do it. So at that given rate, an original pair of flies could eventually lead to a layer of flies thousands of feet thick around the entire planet in just one summer. But why has that not happened?
Natural pest control.
Natural pest controls. Mother Nature doing her job. Because of natural controls. And so what are some natural pest controls? Take a guess.
Birds.
Birds, yes, which is, what would we call a bird? Predator. They're going to eat it. They're going to eat. They're going to eat the flies. Yeah. What else is going to get flies?
Frogs.
Frogs, yeah. And what else?
Temperature.
Temperature. What else kind of goes hand in hand with temperature? What is it that flies don't like seeing? fall from the sky.
Cold weather, rain.
Rain, yeah. They do not like rain. Remember the Tom Hanks movie, Bees or whatever, when he was a bee? Those bees are flying around. It started raining. It scared them to death. They had to seek cover. So, yes, rain. What is Mother Nature's #1 pest control that we should really accept and embrace as landscapers, as gardeners, as horticulturalists?
Chemicals.
No, when we're out making money, yes, I kind of agree with that. But what is Mother Nature's #1 pest control? It's something that a lot of people cannot stand. They're kind of scared of them.
Snake.
Close. I agree. People are scared of it, and that is a good natural pest control. But a little bit.
Spiders.
Spiders. That is Mother Nature's #1 pest control. They do more for the environment than we give them credit for. They eat all these nasty creatures that we find in our gardens, that we find on our shrubs, that we find in our trees. I hate finding them when we're mowing underneath a low branch tree and that cobweb gets all in your face and stuff. That's a big pest for me, but I don't want to damage it. Yes, if it's a black widow or if it's a brown recluse, something that's going to, harm us, we want to get rid of it. But the rest of these spiders, leave them be because they eat so many other insects. They could reduce insecticide, pesticide use, tremendously. They're good things. Plus, those webs are absolutely gorgeous when the sunlight hits them. Where do we see all these cobwebs? Where do we see these spiders build their webs? We could probably go outside. It's almost dark. If we were to go outside and flip on our outside porch light or some kind of spotlight, I bet one of us here in this Zoom meeting could go out there and find a web built across that light. These guys are super smart. Why do they build their net? Why do they build that web across that light?
Attracts their prey or their I guess their food.
Yeah. Those other
They're
insects.
beautiful. And some other, we love our possums. Our possums are fantastic.
They are. What is their favorite food?
Flies.
They'll eat that, but they get rid of a pest that is very dangerous to us. They can eat up to 5,000 in one summer.
Mosquitoes.
No.
Ticks.
Exactly. Yep. They have been known to eat 5,000 ticks in one summer, just one possum. And you know what? They don't contract rabies. They don't want to mess with us. They are solitary animals. The thing is, we just need to leave them be. They're going to come out at night. They don't want nothing to do with us. We don't want nothing to do with them. Leave them be. They get rid of the ticks. Now, Mr. Murphy, you were talking about mosquitoes. What's the mosquito's #1 predator?
Birds.
Birds will eat them, but there's one more animal that'll eat more than the birds.
Bats.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, bats. Yeah.
People hate bats. So look at these animals that we're talking about. These are natural pest controls that people don't like. Bats, possums, and spiders. These little creatures that give you give you the cold chills sometimes to see them. Snakes are another predator. What do they get rid of?
Mice.
Yeah. And we're actually seeing black snakes eat the poisonous snakes. So if you've got a black snake that's in your landscape, most people want you to get rid of it, right?
Yes.
It's kind of a spooky thing to see one. They just kind of give you the creepy crawlies. But if you see one of them, guess what you're not going to have? Copperheads. You're probably not going to have mice. They're just there. Again, they don't want nothing to do with us either. All they're looking for is a safe place to stay and some food to eat. So the most important natural pest controls are climate and weather, food and habitat, pathogens, predators, parasites, and parasitoids. So we've talked about climate. We've talked about the weather. The rain coming, knocking off the flies, reducing that population. Food and habitat. A lot of the times just removing the food source is going to get rid of the unwanted guest. Pathogens. Animals are going to get sick. Predators, what we've been talking about. The spiders. And then we have parasites and parasitoids. What is the difference between a parasite and a parasitoid?
Isn't it, one is the flying insect or something like that?
Yeah. The parasitoids are flying. They're actually little miniature wasps. But the parasitoid, which one's going to kill the host?
The parasite.
It'll
Right.
debilitate. It'll knock them for a loop, but it's not going to kill like every single one. But a parasitoid will destroy it. It'll annihilate. And these parasitoids, the thing about the parasitoids, most people don't know about them. Their botanical names are way too long. They have no common names, and they're microscopic. They have a parasitic wasp that's the size of an aphid that feeds on aphids. Well, it doesn't actually feed on them. They actually can be purchased and released like in a greenhouse environment that's highly infected with aphids. We can release these parasitic wasps, and they will actually find the aphids. They will lay their eggs inside of the aphid. They'll drill a little hole and lay their eggs inside the aphid. What does that do to the aphid in a few days? What is that aphid providing for that egg?
Food or I don't know.
Food for one when they hatch, yeah. But they've got a nice warm place to develop. And so when they do hatch, they'll start eating the aphid from the inside out. And if you ever look at an aphid underneath a microscope and you see like a little black dot or a hole, it's been killed by a parasitic wasp. It's actually had the eggs hatched out inside of it. And then they'll pop a hole and come on through after they've eaten the insides out. That's what I'm saying. Mother Nature, man, she can be harsh. She can be harsh to these creatures. So let's examine each one of these in detail. With climate, what is the difference between the two? Well, climate is the long-term overview of temperature and humidity changes in a region. Now, most of us from anybody in here not from North Carolina? Or is everybody from North Carolina?
New Bern.
You're from New Bern, North Carolina?
Yes.
Oh, okay. But is anybody out of the state, North Carolina, not in North Carolina? I always say here in North Carolina, where else in the world can we see all 4 seasons in one day, right? It feels like that at times, don't it? Especially up in our mountains. The weather is the local and short-term variation in climate. Now we're going to jump into a little bit of vegetable gardening. So maybe we got some gardeners in here. Anybody growing any tomatoes right now? They looking good? Have you ever seen any of these guys, the tomato hornworms? Have you seen any so far this season?
Mm-hmm.
Hadn't seen any. What is the deal with these guys? What could actually cause us to have a larger infestation or a smaller infestation? Has to do with the climate and the weather. These guys don't like wet winters. They're in the ground.
Fungus?
What?
Fungus?
Yeah, I mean that's can be an issue, but they they don't like that wet weather when they're in the ground. They'll actually kind of drown out. If we have a lot of rain, if we have a lot of snow that melts and go into it, they love a cold, dry winter. And so when we have wet winters, we actually see fewer of these guys. If we have a dry winter, we're going to see an increase in their populations. And that's nothing that we can really control, right? I mean, it's just one of those things. But that is Mother Nature, you know, a climate. Food and habitat. No food, no organisms. Pests must have something to eat. Remove it and it's gone. The simplest non-toxic method of control can be limiting the pest's access to food. Now, this might make everybody cringe a little bit, but we ever seen a cockroach kind of go over to the dog food bowl? It's going to happen. Because, guys, I don't care. I don't care if it's a 1,000 square foot house or if it's a 10,000 square foot house. Doesn't matter on income levels or anything. Cockroaches are everywhere. I guarantee you, in any of our clients' house, or if we wanted to dig underneath our kitchen sink, we might find a cockroach. When is it a problem with cockroaches in our houses? What's usually happening?
They mate.
Yeah, they like to mate, but they also don't like running across a cold tile-floored kitchen. They don't like the bright sunlight. These guys want to be in a dark place. They want to be near water. That's why we're going to find them around pipes that sweat and things that, you know, that they can get their water from. If we see them running across the kitchen floor, that means we got too many. They've been pushed out because they'll have a dominance. You know, they'll have the leader that say, hey, look, you got to leave. You got to go find your own food. So when we start seeing them run across the floor, that means we got too many underneath the kitchen cabinets and stuff. Another example of food and habitat, the ash aphid on the Modesto ash trees. What happens with these ash trees, people like cutting them back like they do crepe myrtles. They crepe myrtle them. They prune them back. What happens when we prune trees back? What happens? You get that flush of new growth. Well, that's where the aphids hang out. You're only going to find them in the new water sprouts, whatever, if you call them water sprouts or shoots that pop up, that's where you're going to see these aphids hanging out. So what should we do? What's one way that we could eliminate? Because they're eating the new sucker growth that's coming up when people top them. Or even if they don't top them, the Modesto ash trees are known to get these sucker growths at the bottom and then at the trunk when they're branching out. They'll have the water sprouts. What can we do to eliminate an infestation of aphids?
Cut the new growth off at the bottom. And
Yeah. Yep. Very, very simple. Very simple plan. Just prune those out. And again, that's part of an integrated pest management plan. People the first thing they want to do is they want to start spraying for them. We don't have to. Just cut the new sucker growth out and we've eliminated the problem. And there you can see it. These guys will curl up the leaves, make it nasty. They'll start dripping honeydew everywhere. And so the aphids have 2 population peaks each season. This corresponds when nitrogen levels are at the highest in the foliage. It's spring leaf unfold and fall leaf drop. Well, what are we doing this time of year in the spring and the fall? What are we actually applying to our turf grasses?
Nitrogen.
The nitrogen, yeah. So we're out there plugging and seeding, putting down 18, 24, 12. We're going to have more nitrogen. We're putting out nitrogen in the spring. So what's going to happen? We're going to increase the nitrogen in the trees because they're going to absorb some of that nitrogen as well. So what we don't need to do is create more of a problem with nitrogen applications. That's going to be kind of hard dealing with some of the clients that we have. They're going to want those nitrogen applications. But luckily, you know, there's very few, if any, Modesto ash trees around here. Pathogens. One can properly think of most human lives caught in a precarious equilibrium between the micro-parasitism of disease organisms and the macro-parasitism of large body predators, chief among which have been other human beings. I took this quote from William McNeil's Plagues and Peoples. And I put together, this is kind of an old PowerPoint that I put together at the college, but I did a big presentation for Forsyth County here at the Ag Agent, and we were talking about this just a few days before all the COVID-19 mess started happening. Look what that has done to us. What is the one thing thing that could wipe out mankind overnight? What is the one thing that could wipe us out, meaning human beings, overnight? It's what we're seeing right now. It's what we're seeing right now.
Well,
A disease. A disease could really wipe us out. You know, COVID's been horrible, but it could have been a lot worse. It could have been a lot worse. We've all seen the movie Contagion, right? And seen those movies about the infectious diseases that take over populations. We could have really, really had a major, I mean, it's still scary what's going on, but it could have been worse.
Yeah, it's like Ebola.
Yeah, yes, exactly. That is some scary stuff there. Very scary.
Freaking, all of it's scary.
Yes, yeah. And there was a movie about the Ebola. Had Morgan Freeman, and they were like army scientists. I can't remember what it was called, but that I remember watching that as a kid and was just thinking, wow, what if something like that did happen? Well, it almost did. And unfortunately, I think we're all going to be practicing social distancing probably for a pretty good while after this. And that's kind of hard. That's hard for extroverts. All right. Pathogens. Overpopulation, resource depletion, malnutrition, competition for habitat. We're talking about the cockroaches. You know, they are in competition with each other, living underneath that kitchen sink. But all of these have led to disease and war. When we have an overpopulation, you know, I remember growing up not having a place to deer hunt. There were no deer around here. Now they're in abundance. They are being overpopulated because their resources were depleted. They started getting hungry in places, and they're even going hungry around here. We're starting to see some of the deer, you know, die because of malnutrition, and there is still that competition for habitat. All of that's led to disease and war, especially in the human beings. And plants and animals have been doing it long before we were even around. And predators, they are critical in the suppression of natural populations of animals and plants. Together with pathogens and parasitoids make up the wonderful world of biological control. Biological control is a big business, especially for greenhouses. Again, you can purchase ladybugs, you can purchase the parasitic wasp. Why is it so easy to control pests in a greenhouse with biological control? Why is it hard for us to do it in the landscape setting?
It's not a controlled environment like a closed in, like a greenhouse. And
Yes, exactly. We could release ladybugs out into somebody's shrub beds. What are they going to do? They're going to fly off, but they're contained in that greenhouse. Now, do we want the ladybugs to kill off every single predator, or as one of our goals in integrated pest management, do we want to get rid of any Well, I mean, do we want to get rid of all of the pests, or do we want a few to hang around?
Few to hang around
Exactly. And why do we want those few to hang around?
to eat the bad ones.
Well, yeah. If all the pests are eradicated and not left back, a few's not left around, the beneficials leave. They pack up and move away, and we don't want the beneficials to leave. So predators, they're going to be mammals, they're going to be arthropods, they're going to be microorganisms, or even fungus. They are the free-living general feeders. They may eat a single prey at a meal, or they may consume many individuals, as the lady beetle does. And so predatory insects in the larval stage must consume several prey to attain maturity. Predator adults will lay their eggs near populations of prey where the hatching young have a good chance of getting food. Spiders are exceptions to the rule. What do? We're going to find them near the lights, on the lights. We're also going to find them underneath plant buckets in the nursery. We're going to find them in the landscape at the base of the plant. They're going to be where they can build that web and get to the web pretty quick when one of the insects flies into it. Parasitoids and parasites, we just talked about them. What is the difference? Which is the most effective? If the parasitoid kills it, that's definitely going to be the most effective. Parasitoids are the unsung heroes of naturally occurring insect pest. Oh, oops, sorry, jumped ahead. But an example of a parasite is a pinworm. You know, makes us sick, makes the kids sick that get it. It's not, probably not going to result in death. The parasites, they cannot regulate a pest population, but they can debilitate it. They can slow it down. Parasitoids are the unsung heroes of naturally occurring insect pest control. They're too small to notice. There's no common names. And again, the scientific names are way too long and difficult to discuss. Parasites are the members of the insect order Hymenopteria with bees and wasps. And they are host specific. They're restricted in the number of species they can attack. And here's a good picture of that. This is that parasitic wasp that we were talking about. There's that little shiny black hole inside the aphid. Up here, he's laying the eggs inside the aphid. And they're actually going to hatch inside the aphid. So they've got a warm place to incubate, and they've got plenty of food when they hatch. It says here on the chat that I'm breaking up. Can everybody still hear me pretty good?
Yeah, we can.
Yes.
Hey, I'm having a really bad time with the aphids on my tulip poplars.
Mhm.
Would you suggest that I get some of these, or how do you suggest I deal with those?
Well, yeah, it wouldn't be beneficial to get these guys because they'll probably just fly off.
Okay.
Yeah, they're mainly used like in a greenhouse setting or whatever. Are they way up? I mean, how tall are the poplars? Are they fairly new or?
No, these guys are
Very
older.
tall.
It looks like fall at my house. They're
Okay.
just like
Falling off
crazy
already.
dropping. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
They don't look like they're gonna die or anything, but they're certainly an eyesore at this
Gotcha.
point.
And are they near the turf grass or anything, or are they in like
They
a
are
natural
just
setting?
yeah, right in the middle of the lawn. Just
Right.
crazy.
And it's probably you probably did lawn care apps, fertilized your yard and everything this spring.
Yeah.
So that they're going to respond to nitrogen. So they're that's probably why they're there.
Really?
I mean when they're eating foliage that's absorbing nitrogen, just like with those Modesto ash trees. They were talking
Okay.
about not to fertilize if you're having a problem with aphid. Maybe try not fertilizing. I don't know. Are you going to plug and seed? So you'll probably put down a starter fertilize.
Yeah, my husband's a huge
Lawn care.
fertilizer for our
Yeah.
lawn. So Yeah, that's just, it's crazy. Awesome. Thank you.
And poplars are too tall probably to get in there and spray up in them. So, and then you got to worry
Yeah,
about the drift and everything. So,
I was thinking about doing a Garlon
yeah.
spray, but I don't want to affect my pollinators that much. So,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep.
all right, thanks.
You're welcome. All right. And so, how natural controls work? They work all the time. Then why do some pest populations grow so large that they become a problem? Again, it goes back to us. Two examples. Houseplants, we bring them inside in the winter. What happens to them while they stay inside the house? They're going to get nasty looking. They're going to get bugs. They're going to get pests all over them. What happens as soon as we set them outside when spring breaks and they can be outside for a few days? All these natural predators come and clean them up. And I've seen houseplants that look horrible, and then with a day or two sitting outside, perk right back up.
You hear this?
California oak moth. This was a situation in California where the oak trees were being defoliated by a moth. People would see the moss on their tree. What's the first thing they wanted to do?
Spray.
Spray them. They wanted to spray. If they couldn't spray, they wanted to cut down their oak trees. They could not stand seeing these oaks defoliated. And so a couple of ag agents got to investigating it. These moths were actually defoliating the trees during the dry season, which was beneficial to the oaks. So if they get defoliated during the dry season, what is the tree not losing during the dry season? Water. They're not losing water through the leaves. They're not having evapotranspiration, which is beneficial for the oaks. Now, you've got these moths all over the tree. They're eating the leaves, crunching them up. What are they doing while they're eating? They're using the bathroom. They're eating and pooping. And that poop's falling right at the base of the tree. And so when the wet season return, the rains return, what do these trees have at the bottom already waiting for them?
Fertilizer.
Natural fertilizer. That's right. And so these ag agents got together and they studied this, and these moths were actually beneficial to these oaks. They did them a favor. And so it took a little bit of research, it took a little bit of knowledge and investigating it to realize, hey, we needed to keep these moths. That was actually a good thing. But homeowners, they have to be educated on this stuff, because the first thing they wanted to do is get out the chainsaws or just drench them with a pesticide. We need to learn more about these fluctuations that are a part of a natural cycle of events in their ecosystems. We have to adjust our aesthetic opinions and reactions accordingly. Most of our serious pest problems arise through accidental and occasionally deliberate but misguided introductions of exotic species. So what do you think have been some misguided introductions that we see on a regular basis in the lawn care industry? Dandelions, they were introduced. Kudzu was introduced. We fight that stuff all the time. Chestnut blight, Dutch elm disease, the Mediterranean fruit fly was introduced. The Japanese beetle was introduced to us. And when I say introduced, they might have been brought over from Europe on a boat, and they got here and they just flourished. The gypsy moth, and even that indoor cockroach is not native to the United States. It was introduced. When we breed plants to satisfy human desires, we sometimes destroy traits that discourage insects. Examples, hybrid roses. We keep breeding all these hybrid roses. They are losing their natural traits to fight off diseases, to fight off insects. Grandma's roses are a lot stronger and healthier than the ones we can buy today. So we must thoroughly investigate how we can maintain the natural controls when altering plants or combining plant materials from different environments. And think about that right there, combining plant materials from different environments. We see a lot of plants being planted or being designed and being on the plan that have different water requirements, that have different light requirements. I see it all the time. I'll see a plant that needs high water planted beside a plant that could actually go in a xeriscape gardening, which means it could go pretty good while without water. I'm seeing plants that need full sunlight planted in the shade with other shade plants. And then what happens with our clients? Who are they getting mad at? They're not getting mad at the designer. They're getting mad at us. Everything's blamed on the landscaper, ain't it?
Yeah.
If there's water in the basement, it's our fault. If a plant dies, it's our fault. All right, and this was referenced out of the Gardener's Guide to Common Sense Pest Control. So, sorry about that. I'm going to have to shut him up here in a second. All right, if you guys want to take a 10-minute break, we'll be back at like 9:05, 9:06, and we'll get started with the second set of slides.
Oh, boy.
It's so funny to see the video links from these people.
Get it.
Okay.
Get yourself.
Yes.
We're going to go ahead and start sharing the screen. Sorry, I was on mute. I didn't know that. But everybody in the chat box, go ahead and put your name. If you haven't done so, go ahead and put your full name, your county, and your state, and your phone number. Because I will not be able to upload it if I don't have that information. Connie, can you hear me? Said I'm breaking up. All right, can everybody see integrated pest management for the landscape manager? All right, cool deal. Thanks, Lisa.
Yes.
All right, awesome. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and mute everybody. If y'all have a question, just go ahead and unmute yourself. All right, let's go ahead and jump into Integrated Pest Management for the Landscape Manager. And as we discussed in the previous slide deck, we talked about a pest. And so what is a pest? A pest is any destructive or troublesome insect, animal, weed, microorganism, or a pathogen. It's everything that exists. And when we talk about pests, we're talking about 4 major types of pests. We're talking about the weeds, which is our moneymaker in the lawn care industry. We're talking about disease agents, which can be an even bigger moneymaker. What's one disease that we're starting to see in the turf grass right now big time that we're getting ready to make applications for? And we probably should have went ahead and done a pre-emergent for it, knowing the type of weather that we're having.
Crabgrass.
Yeah, but that's a weed. But what is a disease that we're seeing in our turf grasses right now?
Fungus.
Brown patch.
The brown patch, yes. We're seeing a ton of that. We're seeing absolutely beautiful yards just being overtaken with the brown patch. And why are we having brown patch? What are the conditions that make brown patch so?
Humid, wet, humid, hot.
Yes, humid, hot, wet. Get into the thunderstorms at night. You know, the grass is staying wet overnight. It doesn't have a chance to dry out. Plus, what are we seeing with the irrigation systems? We're still getting all this rain, but people aren't turning off their
Shutting
systems.
them off.
They're not. A lot of these irrigation systems, especially the older systems, don't even have a shutoff valve, a rain shutoff valve, rain sensor. And so it could be pouring down rain, and I see it so many times, even in commercial settings or at residential homes. It's pouring down rain, and you see the irrigation system running. So we're just getting dumped on with water. It's creating the perfect scenario for disease. Invertebrates, our bugs, our insects, and then our vertebrates. Probably one of the coolest classes I think I've ever taken was vertebrate biology, learning the history of the animals with backbones. And it's kind of hard to imagine that this little fella right here is a pest, because we probably either got a kid, a child, or a grandchild in their room. They've got a fish tank with one of these little guys in it. But you know what? If we seen that little guy running across the kitchen floor, we're going to freak out. Pest differences. We have continuous, sporadic, and potential. The difference between them is continuous is nearly always present and require regular control. I'd say that's probably going to be our crabgrass. We're always going to have it each year. Even if we put out a pre-emergent, we're still going to get some. Sporadic, migratory, silical, or other occasional pests that require control once in a while. Once in a while, we'll have it. Possibly the brown patch. We're not going to have brown patch if we have a hot, dry summer. It's just not going to happen. It's got to meet the disease pyramid, the triangle. Potential, not pest under normal conditions, but may require control under certain circumstances. Bermuda grass has the potential of being a pest. Not on the golf course, but definitely in our fescue lawns, definitely in our shrub beds, definitely, you know, growing up through the asphalt and the concrete cracks. So what is a pesticide? It's a substance that is used to kill a pest or prevent or reduce the damage it may cause. Now here, we're finding stuff that we can buy at the big box store. Just grab this picture for it real quick. This is something that everybody is pretty much familiar with. We got Roundup, we got Miracle Grow, and we got Ortho Max, the home defense. Stuff that people go and actually purchase all the time. Now, we have restricted use pesticides, or RUPs, as I'll call them, restricted use pesticides. you're not going to be able to buy at the big box stores. We can't go to Lowe's, can't go to Home Depot and buy restricted use pesticide. We're going to have to go to one of our, lawn care suppliers, either Site One, Green Resource, Southern Ag, places of that nature. Any of you guys ever seen a homeowner trying to buy restricted use pesticide before and they've been told no? They can't purchase them. You have to have a pesticide license to actually purchase a RUP. Pest management goals. Our goals of pest management is prevention, suppression, and eradication. Prevention, we're keeping the problems from occurring. Our pre-emergent pest control, our pre-emergent crabgrass control, our pre-emergent rates on the fungicides that we should have already put out. Suppression, we want to reduce pest population to acceptable levels. Acceptable levels is going to be different for each customer that we have. It's their threshold. Some may not be able to take one weed in their yard. Others are going to be like, hey, I'm okay with it. It doesn't bother me. And we actually had a client like that. Very well-to-do client. They just didn't care. They were always on the go. All they wanted us to do was hang their Christmas lights and mow their yard. They even did their own pruning and pine needling. But it did not matter to them that Bermuda grass was taken over. We're like, hey, do you want us to spray it? Get it? The guy was like, man, to be honest with you, just let it take over. Let it take over. And they were one of the few yards in the neighborhood that, their grass went dormant. Eradication, eliminate the total pest population, something that we do not want to do. Terms that we need to know. We've got our mode of action, how the pesticide works. Is it a poison? Is it a repellent? Desiccant? But the thing is, when pests build up a resistance, one of the things that we need to do is change up our mode of action. Our selectivity. Pesticides may affect many organisms or only a single targeted pest. So we'll have a non-selective and a selective. Non-selective would be something like Roundup that's going to kill everything. Our selective herbicides is going to be something, like Speed Zone. It's going to take care of our broadleaf weeds. Systemic. Some pesticides enter the tissues of the pest, crop, or animal and are transported within, which is a good way to kill it. Contact. Some pesticides do not translocate within the pest plant or even the animal. They're actually only going to be killed by actually having the pesticide on the leaf. The problem with contact, sometimes it could be washed out, washed off, thunderstorm comes up, wipes it clean, or you may not spray the entire plant and it's only killing the areas that you've actually sprayed. Residual activity. The effective lifetime of different pesticides varies from hours to weeks to months or years. This residual activity is something that we have to monitor. A lot of the pesticide labels, do not want us building or leaving that residual. Pesticide resistance. The pest population is no longer controlled by a pesticide, usually due to the elimination of susceptible individuals by repeated exposure. These pests can build up an immunity to these pesticides. That's why we got to change our mode of action. We've got to change even our pesticides to actually keep them from becoming such a problem and developing that resistance to it. Our types of pesticides that we're going to deal with: herbicides for weeds, insecticide for insects and related arthropods, the fungicide for the fungus, rodenticide for rodents, mites. We might be spraying some miticide. We may use nematodes. We've used defoliants a couple times. Repellents, for insects and related organisms. We've used desiccants. We wanted to promote drying. But growth regulators, anybody familiar with that? Anybody actually use growth regulators this time of year after they've pruned?
I have on grass.
You do it on grass. Okay.
Yeah, my golf course. Yeah.
The golf course. Okay, cool. How often are you doing it? And what are you using? What?
Oh, I can't remember what the label is.
Primo?
Yes, Primo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bo Barefoot.
Yep.
Are you
Nitrogen
Legend in his
to it.
own mind.
Do what, sir?
He's a legend in his own mind.
Yeah, that's Primo, some good stuff. You throw the nitrogen to it and then spray that to it. You got a good stand there. So
Yeah, it saves me labor hours too. Cutting.
yep. And how much reduction in mowing do you see from using that?
About a third.
About a third. Wow.
What
And
have you seen?
How often do you have to do it?
I do it twice.
Twice during the season.
Twice during the season. Yeah, because if not, it's just we're cutting all the time.
Yeah. Are you
Plus the plant seems healthier.
They do get healthier. They do. Are you doing it just on tee boxes and in the holes, or are you doing it on fairways too?
I do the tee boxes, fairways, and approaches.
Okay. All right. Cool. And I guess you just not put it on the actual greens.
That's right.
Okay.
My greens are bent.
Oh, okay. Okay. Are you you're down on the coast? Are you guys having any issues with hot weather, or you have to use fans?
Yeah, we syringe during the day.
Yeah. Okay.
Watering is our biggest practice. We aerate a lot, especially if we see hot spots.
Yeah. All right.
Not necessarily aerate, we spike.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Cool deal. We got a course up here that had bent, and they'd have to keep fans on it. For Scythe Country Club, they'd have these big fans, and then they'd have the tractors that they would roll up with the fans, keeping them cool.
Yeah, well, I have a couple of holes that could use them, but by trimming some trees and getting rid of some of the, getting some air circulation into there, it worked okay.
Cool. Good deal. Well, man, appreciate that info, man. I love hearing stories like that. That's Primo has some good stuff. We would actually take that and spray it on we took care of a 80-acre property. It was a residential home community where we had all the homes in there, and we would take Primo and spray it on the sidewalk edges and the shrub bed edges, and it would eliminate, I mean, like I said, a ton of weed eating.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Good stuff. And I love using growth regulators on shrubs, stuff that, I mean, you're going to have to prune probably one time anyway. But as soon as you start seeing that new growth on a plant, if you hit it with the growth regulator Atramac, it's going to stop it in its track. Again, just like with turf grass, it makes a healthier, stronger plant, and it reduces the pruning on the second go-round. A lot of these shrubs, you don't even have to prune, but just that first time. Wow. So again, saving time, saving money, and actually keeping the client happy. Because the one thing a client can't stand is when you charge them from a pruning, and when you prune, you're stimulating growth, you're going to start seeing long shoots in 2 to 3 weeks. And they're like, oh, I just paid a pruning bill. Why is my shrubs looking the way they're looking? So what is IPM? I found 2 similar definitions. Integrated pest management is the coordinated use of appropriated control tactics to reduce pests and their damage to an acceptable level. The combination, and then the second one is the combination of appropriate pest control tactics into a single plan to reduce pests and their damage to an acceptable level. This whole thing, guys, is to an acceptable level. It's going to be different for clients. Some going to not have any tolerance for it. Others are going to let things slide. But again, it is the combination. It's multiple tactics brought together into one plan. So both definitions are very common. Components of the IPM can be grouped into 6 major steps. Identify the pest and understand its biology. And number 1, guys, is the main reason that we have pesticide failures. We've incorrectly identified the pest. We have to know what it is. We have to know the disease. We have to know the insect. We have to know the weeds. We're going to go out and purchase these expensive pesticides, and it's for something else because we incorrectly identified the pest. We're going to have to monitor the pest to be managed. We're going to have to determine if threshold levels of pest populations have been reached. We're going to consider various management choices, and we're going to implement the tactic or tactics that control the pest with the least harm to everything else. And then last but not least, we are going to record and evaluate our results. And that's hard to do for every single customer that we have, but we definitely need to do it. What's the easiest way to take notes when we're at a customer's job site?
Pictures.
Yes, this little thing right here, our cell phones. We take the pictures. How many of you guys are using like a type of software program, like either Clip, Jobber, LMN software, anything like that, where you can actually take the picture and upload it to the client's portal right there in the field? That is some good stuff to have. So overview of IPM, pest identification, the most critical factor, again, in successful pest control. Monitoring or scouting, finding pests, taking samples to estimate their populations. The thresholds determine whether the population is likely to cause damage to justify the cost of control. Sometimes the pesticide application may be more expensive than actually just letting the pest kind of do their thing. But only you and your customer can determine that. Natural control or measures, predators, pathogens, parasites, what we just talked about. Then we can select management or combination of these things to help with the pest. Cultural control, which is crop or site management strategies that reduce pest numbers. Sanitation, remove food, water, shelter. Mechanical is cultivate, disc, mow, remove it by hand. Exclusion, especially if we have insects, we can set up screens, traps, barriers. Biological control, we can introduce the predators and pathogens. We can use naturally occurring or biologically engineered plants, which is host resistance. Quarantine and regulatory control. These are pests covering over a large area, endangering public health. We're seeing that now. We were all quarantined. And then chemical control. Last but not least is use pesticides to kill it, repel it, regulate it. And then evaluate and record results. Recording those results is going to help you in the future to determine exactly what you guys need to do. All right, here we're talking about the threshold. And we got us a little chart here. We got the number of pests over time, and this is our pest population right here. And as our pest population rises over time, it's going to reach an economic threshold. And like I said, you and your customers are going to have to determine this. When is it do they want to take action? We want to do it once it reaches that economic threshold. That way we can bring it down in the treatment. If not, it's going to go into the economic injury level. Once it reaches that point, there's no use in even applying the pesticide. It's going to kill the host or kill our plant, kill our turf grass. Control strategy, again, we talked about the natural controls, the applied controls, just talked about those. Here's resistance. We're going to have an application here where we have one individual that's resistant. In the next generation, he's going to spread his traits down the pipeline. And then you're going to have a few more that become resistant. And then by that third generation, most of them are going to be resistant to that pesticide. We're only going to have a few that are killed. Now, the problem with pesticide resistance, a lot of these insects have multiple generations per year. So the resistance can be built up really, really quick. That's why we've got to change our pesticides, change our mode of action, change the actual chemical that we're using, so we don't see this right here happen. So what is IPM? Let's look at all three words separately. We have integrated pest management. Integrate is to combine two or more things to create something. The pest, an animal or insect that causes problems, especially by damaging the crops. And then management, the act or skill of controlling and making decisions. Initially developed for agriculture, provides a process for identifying pest problems, and then designed to determine whether the cost of a particular pest management action is worth the result. So we got to calculate it. Treatments are not made according to a predetermined schedule. Now, that goes against everything that we do in lawn care, right? Because pretty much we've come up with a lawn care schedule that we've put our clients on. Whenever we start out doing our, soil testing early winter, we go into a lime application. We do our, 2 pre-emergents. We do our winter feeding. We do our fall plugging and seeding, and then we'll do a winter fertilization. And then also each of those applications, we're probably treating for weeds at the same time. So everything is on a predetermined schedule. With IPM, it's not. Treatments are made when and where monitoring has indicated that a pest will cause unacceptable conditions. Now, in the residential lawn treatment, how many of you guys are actually doing that? Running truck tanks or actually using something like a ride-on spreader sprayer? How many of you guys are actually spraying every single day or got crews in the field spraying every day? Are you mixing everything together? Are you mixing your pre-emergent with your fertilize, or are you pushing a granular fertilize and then spraying for weeds or whatever? How are you guys doing it?
I spray for weeds and put all fertilizer I do granularly for my guys so they don't miss anything, or it's better.
It's just better coverage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And fertilize, you're going to fertilize, you want to fertilize the entire yard. When you're spraying, because a lot of these guys and gals will mix their fertility apps with their weed control apps in one tank. If you're actually applying a pesticide where it's not needed, you're in violation of what? The label. Label is the law. I've actually seen it where individuals were spraying, they're spraying their weed control and their liquid fertility, and the yard has no weeds in it.
Awful expensive application then.
Exactly. But if you, yes, 100%. But I've talked to the bigger companies and they're like, with what we're paying our guys, it's cheaper just to mix it all into one tank than to do 2 separate applications.
Well, if they got yards that are well maintained, you can do it with a backpack sprayer as far as spot spraying, especially if you're running something like Celsius or one of those expensive.
Yes.
I
100% agree with you, David. I love the backpack sprayer and the push fertilizer spreader. I mean, that's being the steward of the land, only putting the pesticide where it's needed. Spot spraying. I don't like the broadcast application. So good point there. Unacceptable conditions is economic damage. The damage directly affects productions of economic goods. Medical damage caused by passing of pathogens to humans and domestic animals. Aesthetic damage, probably the one thing that affects us in lawn care and landscape, is the presence of a plant or animal that causes an undesirable change in appearance. And then we have a nuisance problem. Just existing with the creatures is enough for people to implement plan of action. Economic damage, easily assessed in agricultural, forestry, and other related settings. Home examples would be termites, garden vegetables, clothes moths, and even Dutch elm disease. And here we got the termite damage here. Yes, that's an economic damage. This possibly, but this doesn't bother me. I would still eat this. If I eat this, or if I see this, what does this tell me has not happened to this plant? It's
Hasn't
probably
had chemicals applied to it.
exactly. It's a chemical-free plant. When I pull that up and stew it or whatever, put in a salad, I'm not going to see all these bug bite holes. Wash it off good in the sink. I'm 100% okay to do it. I'd rather eat that than to eat a plant that's been covered in a pesticide. Medical damage. The pathogens are transmitted to humans and domestic animals by common wildlife. We saw it with bubonic plague, Lyme disease, malaria. And the sad thing is that there's still people dying every day of malaria. It's just not right. Histoplasmosis, an internal fungus infection. Toxoplasmosis affects the central nervous system. Bubonic plague, you know, flea, some nasty stuff that happened there. The rat carries the plague, gets bitten by a flea. The flea then bites a human, and then we're infected. And just like I said, we've been talking a little bit about COVID. Look at what the bubonic plague did. Pathogens, they're transmitted to humans through domestic wildlife, Lyme disease, the ticks. That's why we got to keep those possums around. They get rid of them for us. I can never say that word. It always tongue ties me. But the malaria, again, I can't believe that young children and people across the world die every day from it. We're better than that. Histoplasmosis happens with chicken farmers, especially the ones working in the tight confinements of a chicken house. They breathe in this stuff. Toxoplasmosis. This is, happens when a pregnant mother handles the kitty litter, or she eats meat that's been contaminated with it. And it affects the baby. It's actually the fetus that gets it. Aesthetic damage. What constitutes an undesirable change is highly personal. The society, people actually just thinks nature is messy. They have a lack of understanding for our natural world. And then ornamental plants are susceptible to attitudes. That same 80-acre site that we had, we worked underneath they called him an executive administrator. And as the place was being built up, whatever, a great guy to work for. His replacement was a great guy to work for. But the one thing that he hated was Nandinas. And the first thing, once he took over, after the first guy's retirement, is we went and dug up every Nandina and replaced it, just because he did not like Nandinas. He had something wrong with that plant that he did not want to do it. And they spent a ton of money replacing it, just because of his attitude towards the plant. The appearance of the pest itself can scare people. You got the spider, leave this guy alone. He's doing us a big favor. Box elder bug. I think that guy right there is gorgeous. I don't know. I love entomology and the study of these guys. They're so cool to study, so cool to pick up. Laura, that works for me, actually my fiance, she'll go and pick up a snake and play with it, but will not touch one of these bugs. I'm the total opposite. And these box elder bugs, are they really damaging this tree? They're not. They're just needing a place to hang out. And we have a tree on campus that we see them every year. It's a one of the lantern trees. That will get these on it for a few days. They'll come and they'll just hang out on these trees. They're not defoliating them. They're not eating them or anything. They're just there for a few days. Students see it and they freak out and they want to know why maintenance hasn't done anything about it. But they're not hurting the tree. Now this is something that's got to be cut. What's the best way to get rid of this? Throw it on the fire. Cut it off. Now, what do we have here? What's the coolest thing about an aphid? What's the coolest thing about its life cycle? What's the one thing that the female does not need to have her young? They don't need the male. Females can impregnate themselves, which is a crazy thing, Talking about ensuring that the survival of your species still goes on, they don't need the male species. Aesthetic damage, again, fear of the future damage causes a concern. Relief of the fear comes from learning the biology and ecology of the pest. Sometimes the damage can be the product of the animal's activity. The problem can be solved by cleaning away the evidence, but leaving the animal alone. But why would we want to clean that up? That is absolutely gorgeous, right? The funnest thing is to go out there and watch all these insects fly into it and see that spider roll out there and spin them up in the web. Again, we have aesthetic damage here, but this type of damage right here can also be medical damage. For one, dropping all that honeydew on the sidewalk, somebody could be, a neighbor could be jogging through it, step in it, slip, fall down, get hurt. It can cause economic damage because if a car is parked right here on the road and it gets that sap or that dew all over it, it could damage the paint. The fear on insects can make an aesthetic damage a medical, which is called entomophobia, and that fear can be overcome by one studying the pest, learning about it. Nuisance problems, groups of animals or plants trying to coexist. Fungus gnats when we're outside trying to watch a ball game or cookout. Sparrows, squirrels, invasive plants such as seedling trees or even exotics. And no animal in itself is a pest. The way each of us feels about the visitor determines whether the animal is welcomed or not, whether it is a pet or a pest. Again, this little guy right here, we've probably got a child or grandchild that we know that's got one in a fish tank somewhere and they play with it every day. But lo and behold, they drop it or they see one of its brothers or sisters run across the floor, they are freaking out. Pest or guess. In 1970, the National Park Service was called in to a very highfalutin golf course community. It's not here in North Carolina, but the golf course residents kept getting bit by mosquitoes. And of course, they didn't like that. They'd be on the golf course, they kept getting bitten and, having to deal with all that stuff. However, just downriver, local farmers and low-income residents used to fish in the river to supplement their diet. The National Park Service was called in, and they introduced a BT, which killed the mosquito larvae in the river. Well, what do you think happened to the farmers and the individuals with the lower income? What were they not able to do? Supplement their diet. They were not allowed, they didn't have the fish. Because the fish, they jumped ship. They swam downriver and found more food to eat. The mosquito larvae was the food for the fish, which were feeding the people. So there's an instance where a mosquito was actually part of the food chain that we needed to keep. It is a human social context in which the organisms exist that determine whether a population is pestiferous. It is almost always the size of the population, not merely the presence of an individual organism, that matters to us, human beings. Is the damage tolerable? A few fleas on the family dog? Probably so. I mean, that's just going to be expected. Even if we flea dip them or have a collar on them, they're going to get one. We're going to find them dead, though, so that's the good thing. But if we get fleas in the carpet, that's a big problem. We're going to see a cockroach in the cabinet. It just exists. I don't care. It happens. But that cockroach, again, crawling on the floor means that we've got an infestation. Because they don't want to see us. They don't want to be around us. They don't want to run across the cold tile floor. They don't want to be in the sunlight. Is that damage tolerable? Total eradication is virtually impossible. Total eradication is undesirable. It kills the natural pest enemies. It upsets a broader ecological balance and warranted really invaded species. So if we are to see a new species come about, we would want to try to eradicate it. We don't want it to get set up. We don't want it to become a so-called introduced native. Your toleration without harm to your health or plants of the presence of the pest or pest-related damage. It's a three-step process. How much aesthetic, medical, or economic damage can be tolerated? Find out how large the pest population can grow before it causes that level of damage. And then the treatment level to keep the pest population small enough not to cause damage. Here we're talking about some fleas again. Here's a picture of my old family cat. He's no longer with us, but I love this guy to death. I am a dog person, but for some reason, this little guy touched my heart. And I would check him every single day for fleas because, for one, they wanted to get rid of him because of that toxoplasmosis. Second, he started using the bathroom on the couch quite a bit, and it's always hard to get rid of that smell. But he had been declawed. And so everybody was like, let's take him to the pound. Let's take him to the pound. I'm like, no, you know what's going to happen. They're going to put him down. So I'm like convinced everybody, let's put him outside. He's still got his back claws. This dude became the happiest cat ever and started loving on me from day one. But I checked him every single day for fleas because he would come inside and eat, and then he'd go to the door just like a dog and want to be back outside. I would comb him. I was using the comb as a trap, and I was monitoring, is his flea population rising or falling? Did I find a dead one? Was there a live one on him? But I would sit there on the outside patio, and I would do that for 10 or 15 minutes, spend time with him, and see how he's doing. I was monitoring it. Well, if I saw fleas on him, guess what I didn't need to do? I didn't need to bring him in the house. But if he was clean, I didn't see any, or if I found a dead one, he's pretty good to go inside to eat or whatever. You need to be good at noticing things when monitoring. You need to be aware of your activities and how they affect affect other organisms, either pestiferous or desirable. The levels of effort. You have hearsay. 2 is casual looking, no record keeping. 3, casual looking, written observation. 4, careful inspection with written observation. 5, regular written observation and quantitative descriptions. 6, quantitative sampling on a regular basis. 7, statistically valid quantitative sampling. You know, I was only doing 2 on the cat. I wasn't going all into this. We need to match the level of monitoring to the importance of the problem. The most common and least helpful are 1 and 2, but levels 3, 4, and 5 are most helpful in home and garden. You'll usually start at level 3 and progress your way to level 5 if you think the problems will become serious or recur. And then level 6 is usually used in greenhouses when using beneficial insects. You don't have to count numbers. You can use small, medium, or large infestation. And importantly, you must assess the situation at regular intervals and make record of what you see. It can be very informal. Monitoring. What do you think the most valuable monitoring tool you can have is? These guys right here in your head, your eyeballs.
Camera.
And a camera, yeah. Yes. But you got to be able to see it. And you got to be able to go back at night. Now, it's going to be hard to tell your customers, hey, I need to come out here at midnight and see what's going on in your yard. But what's the number one reason for pesticide failure? Misidentification of the pest. There are multiple pests out there that cause the same type of damage. But if we're not seeing the pest, how do we know which pest it is if several pests can cause the same damage? We have to get out there and visually see it. So yes, it's going to be hard to get out there at midnight and look in your customer's backyard or in their garden. But what you need to do is have them look, see what's going on. You may have to set up some traps for different types of insects to see what's going on. The difference in hours of activity is one of the most common causes of misidentified pests. We're looking in the daytime, but it's actually a pest that's happening at night. Keep a toolkit in the truck. You know, we've got a hand lens, like a magnifying glass, an aspirator to suck up the insect, sticky traps, pheromone traps, even some plastic vials and Ziploc bags, a hand trowel, flashlight, notepad, pruning shears, and we've got our phone, you know, with the camera on it. Best thing to have. So what to look for? To know where to look for the pest, you must know something about the biology and the ecology. But to find out more about its biology and ecology, you must know what the pest is. You got to identify it. So which comes first? Depends on what you know. If all you see is the pest damage and not the pest, try to answer these questions. Evidence of damage, what is it? Presence of natural enemies, do we see any? Is there relevant human activities that may cause some of these insects to come about or have them attracted to the area? What are some other potentially contributing activities? And what has the weather and microclimate been like? In timing treatment activities, you often need to consider the life cycles and seasonal variations of both the pest and its natural enemies. With the flea example earlier, we know that fleas tend to be a problem a certain time of year. Generation time may be shorter or longer than the seasons, and this has a bearing on the treatment schedule. Bagworms before the bags, beetles treated while they're grubs in the lawn, mosquitoes as larvae in the water source. Turn the water sources over. Don't let water collect. Correct timing is even more crucial in the application of the meaning or less toxic commercial pesticides such as microbial controls and insect hormones. We got our BT, with the label name dipel and caterpillar attack. Treatment should only be applied where the problem is most severe and have the greatest impact. Flea example, the fleas are in the bedding in the house, not just on the pet, so tactics focused on the animal are less effective in the long run. We got to get them out of the house too. When spot treating, you need to leave a small, local, untreated residue of pests to feed the beneficial natural enemies. If not, the natural enemies will leave because they have nothing to eat on. And then when treating only the critical areas is known as the spot treatment. And that comes out of chapter 1 and 3 of your core and ornamental and turf. And again, the Gardener's Guide to Pest Control. And so that actually wraps up the lecture part. You guys got any questions or?
What are they doing now for pigweed?
For what?
Pigweed.
Pigweed. To be honest with you, no, we haven't seen a problem with it. Where are you actually located, Rob?
I'm in Cumberland County.
And where?
Cumberland County.
Okay. Is anybody else seeing any issues with it?
Seen a little bit of hogweed as well.
Oh, okay. I have seen a little bit of that, but not much. Any other questions or any other comments of what you guys are actually seeing out there? And
Eric, what do you suggest for doveweed and celebration? It's getting worse every year in the New Bern area.
what do you think it is? Because you're not the first person that I've heard say that. Is
I don't know. It's in established lawns too, so it's stronger than the Bermuda. It gets right through it. I've been spraying Escalade on it, and I've been spraying Speed Zone on it, but it takes multiple applications. And then if I use a Speed Zone, it takes the color out of the lawn, which is a little unsightly for the owner.
Yeah.
In the golf course. So
And how long has it been?
I thought I would maybe try something pre-emerge in the next few weeks because I usually see it middle of July, late July, and then August. So I was wondering what your thoughts were.
How long have you been seeing it?
This will be the third year.
And I know this might be a little off the wall, but how long has it been since the major hurricanes down there?
September. It's been 16, 18 months now.
Okay. So you were actually seeing it before that.
Yes.
I'm stumped.
Okay, well, if you think of something, would you just
Yeah.
email me or text me?
Yeah, I will. I will.
I've been working with James Duke, and we've tried a few things, but nothing keeps it out. It's a tough little guy to get rid of.
Oh yeah. Yep. But I will definitely look into that. If we
All right,
find
thank
something,
you.
we will definitely give you an email.
It's Frank Vergale.
Yeah. I got that's the name right there on the video little block. And I do have everybody's email from when they registered. And if y'all want to write down my email, my personal email, guys, is ejones@turfteacher.com. EJONES@turfteacher.com. And you can always shoot me an email or call me. My personal cell phone's 336-414-9719. 336-414-9719. Any other questions? And everybody, and next week, Lisa, we will start at 7:00. Yeah, I just had to bump it up tonight. We had something come up. I actually, I shouldn't say this, but I forgot it was my mom's birthday. So we, when we planned these courses, we planned them for every Tuesday, in June, July, and August. And so I didn't even think about it. So I went to her little birthday party and then had to push it up. So my apologies. But yeah, every Tuesday night will be at 7:00.
Happy birthday to your mom. You only got one.
I know. She turned she turned 69 today, so still trucking it every day. Dad's 72 and he leaves every day with a crew working in the field. Yeah, hey, yeah, Mr. Murphy, I've got your email. I sent you an email right before the class started too. Hope you got in. Yes, sir.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I got all my information.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and I still got your text message saved on the phone with your
Okay.
contact info in it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Sorry, guys. Well, if there's not anything, man, I appreciate it, guys, and we'll get these punched in. Just make sure in the chat box you typed in your name, your license number, county, state, and your phone number. And I've got the chat saved. I've got everybody. I screenshotted the list of people in it. So if everything's good, I'm gonna go ahead and close that out. And thank you guys for attending. And we'll get these uploaded for you, and you should see them in about 7 days. So,
All right, good night, Eric.
thanks, guys. Take care, y'all.
All
See
right.
ya.
Yeah.
Lisa, my email is ejones@turfteacher.com. Shiloh, stop.
Hey, can you please repeat your phone number?
It's area code 336-414-9719.
Okay.
336-414-9719. And my email is ejones, EJONES, @turfteacher.com.
Couldn't hear your phone number. Can you say it again,
Yes,
please?
336-414-9719.
971.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And Lisa, yeah, ejones@turfteacher.com.